Good morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod TV's World Edition. In our World Edition, we bring you news from around the world, talk about innovation, and also what we can do to continue to navigate through a never ending pandemic as we see the Omicron variant continuing to rage on, although it's peaking a bit. We will soon be a part of the Roku network, and so we're honored to have you here today on our show, wherever you are from around the world. I bring you greetings from the All American city of Morrisville in North Carolina, the eighth largest state in the United States of America. Today we are virtual all as a family working from home, so I'm not downstairs where the set's a little nicer, so please bear with me. Couldn't quite make it down the stairs, but I wanted to today just give you a quick synopsis of the Ukraine, as we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And then tomorrow will be India Republic Day, where we'll be bringing in a guest, Sanjay Puri from US Impact. And then on Thursday, we'll be having Jeremy Robbins from the New American Economy, now the American Immigration Council, as I will be opening up with my WRL TechWire blog on skilled immigrants and how they can help us address the labor shortage in America. Now, I've been doing some research about the Ukraine with trying to figure out what Putin is up to and why there's such an intent to invade the Ukraine. President Biden, as recently as last week, said that if there's any attack on the Ukraine, there will be serious consequences for Russia. Now, Ukraine, which was part of the Russian Empire for centuries before becoming a Soviet republic, won independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. It immediately went on to move it away from its imperial Russian legacy and started to forge close ties with the West. The president at the time, Viktor Yanukovych, was actually rejected an association agreement with the European Union in favor of close ties with Moscow, which led to mass protests, and that saw him removed as a leader. Russia responded by annexing the Crimean Peninsula, which once again heightened tensions between the Ukraine and Moscow. According to Kiev, more than 14,000 people have died in the fighting that devastated Donbass, Ukraine's eastern industrial heartland. Ukraine and the West have accused Russia of sending troops and weapons back to the rebels, and Moscow has continued to deny it. According to Kiev, more than 14,000 people have died, as I said, in Donbass, and Vladimir Putin has repeatedly said that he does not want Ukraine to join NATO. So I think it's as much about what Putin doesn't want as what he wants. He does not want them to join the European Union and NATO. And so that is one major factor that I think that is driving this debate. Now, at the same time, as we're waiting, we need to ask ourselves, what would happen if Russia invaded the Ukraine? What would be the things the United States could do? Well, first of all, there could be significant financial consequences for Russia. First, they could cut Russia out of the SWIFT financial system, which would move money from banks around the globe, and this would be hit Russia very hard, damaging the economy in the long term. Sanctions could also involve cutting Russia off from almost all international transactions, including profits from oil and gas production. This is clearly something that would hurt not only Russia, but Europe, much of Europe, where today gas prices are 400 times increasing by 400%. There's already gas shortages. So Putin could know that any sanctions that the United States or other countries would put on him could lead the world into a global recession. So maybe he's calling our bluff, knowing that Russia provides so much of the natural gas to Europe that they just wouldn't be able to do this. And he could be calling our bluff into saying, look, I want you to be less close with Ukraine. I want the West to not abandon your ties with the Ukraine, but not to be so publicly open. So the fear of war has many of us around the world scared. I personally believe that Vladimir Putin, a former agent of the KGB, is a very strategic, stalwart politician. Like Sasha Starr on our show, he knows how to play chess. He has always been not really a proactive aggressor, but more reactive, looking at the regions around him, slowly calculating his quest to bring back the Russian Empire. The world is watching very closely, but I wouldn't be counting on World War III quite yet. Let the negotiations continue, and we'll be monitoring this situation very, very closely. With us today, we have Mark Lee and others around the world that are joining.
Yep, we've also got our amazing person that you just mentioned earlier and everything, that being that great chess player as well as a great investor from that area known as Canada, Mr. Sasha Starr. So glad that
Mm.
he's here and everything. As y'all can tell, I went and got a haircut and everything, and you'll be glad to know, Sasha, that the person that I was there with and everything, my barber is a part of the Muslim culture here in America, but he is also a big fan of chess because he used the chess analogy when we were talking about the change of roles between men and women. And he was just saying that while there are some of those changing roles, and there are some women that are waiting till later in life to actually go into family and everything, he was using the chess analogy and
Well,
what the power of the queen and the king are to kind of make his point and everything. So I just thought you'd find
well,
that interesting.
and
And I
and
might share more about that later.
And the thing, well, I'm so glad about Sasha Star. Sasha, I did my best to sum up. This has actually forced me to read a little bit more about the history, which I think is important. I know I don't know as much about this region as you, but the thing I also forgot to mention is that there has been I've heard Fareed Zakaria talk about independent republics which Russia has named like Luhansk and Rohansk and South Ossetia, right? And we forgot to mention Belarus and their role in all of this. But is, creating these independent states, is that something that Putin can also do within certain regions to provide more autonomy for those more? So I think what I'm trying to say is there's parts of these provinces in Russia that have much more Russian influence. And so one thing Putin can do is declare them as independent states. Correct? He's done that before.
Yes, that's his way of operating in post-Soviet territory. He's creating a chaos in some areas, uh, make them independent states or some kind of a territory which is even unclear. It's happened, for example, in Moldova when he created a certain territory which is under under basically different controls than the rest of Moldavia, and that suits his purposes. He wants to create a chaos to show that all these new states cannot function without ties with Russia and
Okay, so
without being
it's
obedient to Russia. So he's creating this very, very difficult condition, uh, starting from outright war or to have preserving the chaotic state in that certain territory that cannot function and develop normally. That's unfortunate thing. Now, speaking about the Ukrainian issue, I think people misread really the goal of Putin. He doesn't need Ukraine. He doesn't want to invade Ukraine. And in fact, if West wouldn't be attached to Ukraine at all, Putin would never even bother to do anything regarding Ukraine. But this is very convenient, a pressure point for Putin to play his, I wouldn't call it chess, it's rather a poker game. So what he's saying essentially is, it's not Ukraine I need. I need you. You are United States, Germany, and all the rest of the European countries. I want you to be obedient to my desires, my wishes, and here is what I want now. But even if West will give him what he wants now, he will go farther and ask for more and more. It's been already played out in Munich in 1938, when regardless what you would give to dictator, it's never going to be enough. He will ask for more and more and more.
yeah. I
So
mean, yeah, Sasha, that's a great point.
that's
And I mean, he's really a very seasoned politician, right? I mean,
yes,
he knows
yes.
everything. He's playing chess. He knows. I mean, I think the sanctions, for example, right? I mean, the fact is, it sounds good on paper, but if you hit sanctions on Russia and you cut them off from oil, and I forgot to also mention even access to the US dollar, you could really hurt much of Europe because, they're getting a lot of their natural gas from Russia. So you spiral the world into global recession. So Putin is like, they're not really going to be as severe as that. And even if they are, they're just hurting themselves. So perhaps,
Um, there are more important forces in play. Don't forget that the Putin, as a dictator, he doesn't have to answer to his people what he's doing, why he's doing, or whatever. He just does whatever he believes it's a good move. And don't forget that he's employing a lot of scientists, including game theorists, specialists,
Hmm.
who are evaluating the situation. There are pressure points both for Putin and for the West. They understand that the West is not free to function the way Putin does, because in the West, people are responsible to their electorate. So they have to justify what they're doing and why and so on. And also they're elected every 4 years or so, and Putin is not. So that Putin has a huge advantage, a tactical specifically, in his power game with the West. So from the game theory, okay, here's what you do now, and there are options. First of all, in game theory, it's very important to have initiative. So you start first, and it's like in poker, for example. There's advantage just in your seat position. It doesn't matter what card you have. Actually, uh, I read one very comprehensive book on poker, and it suggests you, if you want really to become a master in poker, you play the game without watching your cards. It
Okay.
doesn't matter what cards you have. It's a matter of your aggressive the strategy. It's space advantage. For example, if you bet first, you already put your partner on defense. Let's see, it doesn't matter what card you have. You just let's see, imaginary. You just put $10,000. So the other side, now you have initiative. You initiated something that the other side has to respond. This is your space advantage in a poker game. In politics, it's exactly here what's happened. Russia says this is what we need, and we need it now. And we need it in writing. And we need guarantees and all that stuff. What kind of stupidity it is? Whom are you talking to? But it doesn't matter, because he is using his space advantage. He is using his position as a dictator, so he's not accountable to anybody. And this is what's really happening. The West is in very hot spot. How to deal with that, how to respond. You know what the best response would be, in my opinion? To say, Putin, go to hell. And now what?
Uh,
Now Putin really has to do something. But now the ball is in his court. The West responded in writing, if you wish, and it's your move, Mr. Putin. Now,
yes,
there's in chess something what called Zugzwang. Zugzwang, it's a German word. It means regardless which move you do, your position will become worse. And because in chess you cannot miss the move, you must make your move, and it's your move. And regardless what it is, your position is getting worse.
well, and by the way, I just found out, I'll be on PBS Carolina on Friday,
Friday.
live from the studio, talking about maybe Russia. Now it's a little nerve wracking because they just say you might be talking about 19 different things. So it's like, oh, great. It's like a political science exam.
Yeah, you
Um,
just got to study for it and everything. One of the things
yeah,
I was curious about, even coming back to what Sasha was saying, is that for decades now, it sounds like that Russia has been masterfully playing this whole game and everything in terms of what they're doing in their own country, but also their influence on other parts of the world, whether it's their impact on the elections, whether it's their impact on the various grids that exist here in the United States and the West, and even kind of coming back to the chess analogy, to them getting us to um, almost have to commit, because it's almost like they put it in a situation where you almost felt like you had to react. I think that that's kind of what Biden's mindset was, and that's why there are now something like 120,000 troops sitting of ours that are over there against the border and are prepared to battle along the Ukrainian border. So, do you think that that was a wise move on Biden's part? Should he have committed that many troops over there and everything? I mean, well, that's what they're saying that he may do that. That's what I meant to say. But there's the 120,000 Russian troops, and then he's saying that they may go and counter that. So, do you think that that's a wise move, or is that not a wise move?
It's nothing to do with Biden, really. It's much bigger than Biden. It's a all civilized world against a dictator who is using his temporary advantage in arms race. Russians are now, they have about 2 years to do anything with the West, because after 2 years, when the United States and all others will get hypersonic rockets or so on, the Putin's temporary advantage will be gone. So his timing is almost perfect, because right now, when he has that advantage, and he has the consolidation of his power to the greatest height at any time that he's ever been at the rule of Russia. He's using that very powerfully. And to tell the truth, I believe that West is almost at the point where they have to tell him to go away and be prepared for the consequences. The only thing is Putin's game so perfect that he will go even farther and actually will start war, not only with Ukraine, but all out war, including nuclear. It's hard to say, because he also has something to lose. He has many kids, two official and several unofficial, and he's masterminded to how to spread his perhaps $1 trillion personal wealth in all kind of foreign jurisdictions and offshores and everywhere else, to pass it all to his children. So he has something to lose as well. And but again, it's a game, and it's very difficult to forecast
Yes, it's
what's going to happen.
definitely difficult to
It's a,
forecast. And
well,
Steve,
you
one
know,
of the things that one of the Republican senators said, I think it might have been Durbin from Illinois, is that the U.S. needs to provide moral leadership, saying America is definitely prepared to sanction Russia if they invade. And he also said that they want to stand by them and do not want a war, but they want to top Putin's aggression and all of that. So while we're thinking about these different things that may go on, whether that's putting troops in there or near there to kind of like be deterrents or things along that lines, or whether it's trying to claim a moral high ground. Do you think that this is kind of the right way to go? It sounds like I'm kind of agreeing with Sasha that we need to probably maybe call the bluff, but at the same time, maybe not be as forceful about it. But I was just wondering your thoughts.
I think it's something that we have to tread with caution, right? I
Right.
mean, like I said, I've been researching. I might, I haven't had a chance to dive in the numbers, but there's a significant amount of natural gas, for example, that is provided by Russia to Europe. And if you impose sanctions, we already are in an energy crisis here with gas prices rising. But imagine if that would trigger something that would even be worse. And then you have a president who's dealing with a similar crisis that Jimmy Carter did with the embargo crisis. Um, so I think that we don't want to reward this kind of dictatorial behavior. But maybe Sasha's right. The way that we do it is just ignore him like a bratty child. Just say, forget it. Let's not give him so much attention, because right now he's taking all the oxygen out of the room, and he knows what he's dealing with. And I don't think that he has any intent of invading Ukraine based on what I'm reading. I think he's playing chess, knowing, trying to see what our next move is. Because
He's playing poker. It's not chess.
poker,
See, chess
poker,
is a very
poker,
objective game where you see
poker.
your
Okay,
force. It's poker. It's 100%
poker.
poker.
He's playing
Now,
poker. Yes, to trying to figure out what the next move is. He wants to see what our next move is going to be, right?
Yeah, but most important, he is making his first move. If you see, when you play poker and you bluffing, it's very important to have a continuation bluff. If you bluff and all of a sudden you stop, you lost. It doesn't matter even what hand you have. But if you're bluffing and you have continuation bluffing, it's a winning strategy. It doesn't matter what card you have. It's just continuation. You put $10,000, your partner say, "Okay, I'm in." So next move, you put $50,000. Now, what he's gonna do? Now, if you don't, and if you say, "I'm pass," you lost the game because now your opponent knows that you were bluffing, and he will put $50,000 in front of you, and you have to basically resign. So now the situation also is very interesting that so far West played very well because they had this ultimatum or so. It's already what, months and a half old or so. Now on the 4th of February, Putin is going to China and he wants to show Chairman Xi what he's achieved in all this little poker game. So far, he is empty-handed. There is nothing for him to show to Chairman Xi, and Chairman Xi will be very upset. So you're telling me that you're fighting the West, and you did this, and you did that. Show me results. Oh, you don't have results. Just go away and don't ever come back. That's why
Yeah,
Putin is
yeah, that
pressuring.
makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And Sasha, just out of curiosity, and just so folks know that we know the different figures and everything, but what are your thoughts about Biden's actual saying that he wants to put people on heightened alert? The actual figure was 8,500 U.S. troops have been put on heightened alert for possible deployment to Eastern Europe. And he actually said that yesterday, according to one of his spokespeople, that being a Pentagon spokesperson. And the U.S. Secretary of Defense has said that he is definitely prepared to deploy orders at the direction of President Biden. So do you think that we should even be thinking about deploying those amount of folks into that area, so we just let them stay at home or stay in other parts of the world and not even focus on that part? Or should we be using this kind of tit for tat kind of deployment concept or not, in your opinion?
In my opinion, Putin respects the power. He respects the strength, especially military strength. And since I believe that he has no plans to invade Ukraine, so extra 8,500 troops, which is quite a power. I mean, it doesn't matter that Russia has 120,000 troops on the border. I believe that 8,500 U.S. troops are more efficient than 120,000 Russian troops, especially when Ukraine, all country. It's interesting. I've watched yesterday Ukrainian talk show. What's interesting is, first of all, I understand 100% of Ukrainian language, just 100, not less, 100%. Number two, they had politicians and journalists and all kinds of people. Interestingly enough, they use both languages. They talk Russian and they talk Ukrainian. And the only thing is that the person, the talk show host, he speaks equally well both languages. So when he's talking to Russian speaker, he's talking Russian, and when he's talking to Ukrainian speaker, he talks Ukrainian. Don't forget that both Russian speakers and Ukrainian speakers, they also know both languages very well, and the audience understand both languages. So it's very interesting how they mingle from one language to another. But the reasons that I watch it, I want you to see the atmosphere of Ukrainians. They are all speakers on that show. They were saying that they and their friends and families and everybody that they know of, they are ready to take arms in their hands, even if they're not part of a military system, and defend their home, their city, their village, and whatever, until they will prevail or they will die. And in either case, they will fight for every inch. Does Putin really need that? Even if he will be victorious through insane war power, military power, and so on, how he's going to retain this territory where people will be fighting the partisan war until the very end. There's no way
Yes.
he can do it.
Well, it's
Yeah,
just one of the, it's like one of those things on the dashboard, right? He's got Russia, Ukraine, he's got pandemic, testing, vaccination, he's got, you know, just
yeah, he's
all
got a lot
kinds
on
of
his.
issues.
Yeah,
Yeah, and by the way, it has been announced. I'm supposed to talk about it on Friday that he will be having Kamala Harris on the ticket again, and he has declared he is running again for president.
oh wow, I did
So
not know
so
that.
much for the thing. Now we'll see. Is he calling a bluff? And will he next year announce he's not running? But
Well, not only
I
that,
don't
but
think I don't think
but
that they're gonna.
yeah, but has a incumbent ever, and I can't think of one. I have to do some research, just like you're talking about doing and everything. But in our long illustrious history, has an incumbent ever lost his own party's primary? Because if that's the case, then that's going to be the same ticket. Then that means that there would be nobody else challenging him. And I don't know whether that's happened. That the incumbent actually, I know there have been incumbents that have lost the election, but have they ever lost their
No,
primary?
no. Lyndon Johnson bowed out.
Right,
Basically saying I will not seek nor will I accept my party's nomination. Came on national TV, quite a surprise at the time. And they pulled out. You had Jimmy Carter have Ted Kennedy run against him in 1980
right,
for the primary, and that didn't work.
right.
So I don't. Yeah, I don't think I think it's just a strategy of knowing that their only way of keeping the White House is holding on to incumbency. I don't know whether this is a good. We'll have to see what happens in the off-year elections.
Right.
I don't know if this is good news or bad news. If Trump does come back, I see. Let me tell you, as a city councilor and elected official, I see a lot of people. Let me say this: when I put a picture of Joe Biden in my newsletter on Facebook, I get many more negative attacks than I did a year ago.
Hmm.
Very nasty attacks from even my own supporters, um, who say, why do you put that down? Or that's disgusting, or I voted for you. So he's not as popular as he was a year ago, um, from people that might have been giving him a chance. So I don't know if that's a litmus test of, um, this might be a different presidential election for Joe Biden to say, look, put me back in for 4 more years, if he can't get out of the hole that he's in right now. And I know Sasha would agree. We both supported Biden, but it hasn't necessarily been the best time for him right now as president. Can he get out of a hole? Yeah, but I just don't know what he's going to have to do. Hire a new
Yeah,
publicist, first of all.
yeah, he definitely needs a new policy. He might need some new people on his staff, including some other people in other offices that are probably holding him down as well. But one of the things that I just heard, and I'd love to hear both you and Sasha's thoughts about this. I wish Nick was here because he's actually in this state that I'm getting to mention. But apparently, a New York judge yesterday said that the state's mask mandates can't be enforced because the governor over there, Kathy Hochul, had said that she was going to reinstitute them, but after the whole winter surge around coronavirus cases. So the state Supreme Court judge came out and said that they didn't have the legal authority to implement the mandate, and it was up to the state legislature to do so if it was needed. So that's going to be something else going on. So I'm wondering how many people are walking around, because I know Nick went up there for a business meeting, that are walking around unmasked because they're feeling like they have the right not to be masked. And now that the Supreme Court has stated in, because earlier this month, the state health department has said that the mandate would be in place until February 1st, which is just around the corner and everything. But I was just wondering, do you think we're going to see a lot more of this where the states and the judicial systems are going to jump in and therefore create even more of a confusion as we continue to get out of the pandemic? And I've heard some people say that they think the pandemic will be over maybe by this year, but then others are saying, nope, you might need to still look for another long haul of about 3 or 4 years, if not longer. So what is your feeling, Sasha, as to where we are with this pandemic and whether these mask mandates can be enforced, whether it's here or in Paris or even there in Canada?
I think that situation has drastically changed with the Omicron variant compared to Alpha and the first one that we met with in March or so in 2020. So this one is not as lethal as the Alpha variation. However, it's much more transmissible, and I'm not so sure if mask can prevent you from getting Omicron variant. Perhaps mask still protects you somewhat, but it doesn't protect you at all. The vaccines, triple vaccines, they do protect you, but not 100% at all, not even 80%, probably less. So if you combine the vaccination and masks, you are getting somewhat enhanced protection if you're not wearing mask and you're not vaccinated, especially if you are
Yeah.
being infected. In both cases, if you are vaccinated, I think your chances to have it in a lighter form, not to get to ICU unit and to survive actually are much greater. So again, I wouldn't rule the vaccination out or masks, but I would be mindful that they are not 100% protection either.
I think Mark, to answer your question, I think we're headed towards a situation where we're going to have to just start getting used to living with this virus, sort of like what England and Europe is doing.
Right.
I think that the other conversation we haven't had, and I've heard Bill Maher talk about this, and I have one client in my career that I represent in healthcare, is that this might push us to also analyze the health of our populations, those that are more susceptible to getting these kinds of viruses. There's been a lot of data and focus on COVID deaths, but not really a focus on if someone is obese or they have cardiovascular disease or they have diabetes, are they more likely to get this kind of an infection than someone who is fit, someone that's eating healthy, someone that isn't eating fast food? So this may be an opportunity for us also to start focusing on our health as a country. I think Canada is a healthier country than the United States. There's so much fast food going around. We eat big portions here in America, and and so it might focus, help us focus in on being healthier, and because there's been sort of a shift away from that, and
Well, yeah,
there's so
that's the
much
ironic.
focus about getting a shot, and
But
sometimes you
that's
got to
the
do more.
ironic thing is that what you're talking about is something that because I've got some friends in that camp, even though I would not consider myself in that camp. But that's those things that have probably should have been talked about for decades are now being thrown more into the limelight because of people that are against getting the vaccine for whatever their reasons. Because definitely there's more conversations around healthier living and definitely eating less fast food and less processed food because that's one of the arguments that some of those folks will make and everything. And there's also been conversations around the power of a major lobby organization, that being the pharmaceutical industry, which of course we have a lot of those people here in North Carolina and in other parts that are near us, like Virginia and South Carolina and other places that are, in this general region, everything. But it's getting folks to refocus that conversation. I'm sure that was some of the things that they mentioned when they went up to DC, because apparently there was a protest that was up in DC this past Sunday. There was some of those that were against the vaccine that rallied and went and made their call to the government as to what they wanted to have happen. And they came from all over. I think the numbers were less than they were expecting, but they still did come and everything. And that was held on this past Sunday, so 2 days ago and everything. But it is getting us to deal with other issues that we probably should have been talking about, but that they are bringing to the forefront as part of their arguments. Now, some of their other arguments, not sure that I quite buy them or quite understand them, but some of the things around like the power of the pharmaceutical industry and also eating healthy. I mean, even in the early days of the pandemic, we heard people saying that we needed to eat more things that would give us natural vitamins and help the natural immunities and everything. I remember even some of our doctors on some of our early shows here talking about things along those lines. So, Sasha, do you think that it's actually maybe broadened the conversations that should have been had before?
Marco, could you repeat your question, please?
I was asking, do you think that this whole conversation around some of the arguments that the anti-vaccine folks are making has broadened the conversation to get us to focus on things that we probably should have been focusing on in the past, such as the power of the pharmaceutical industry, the power of one particular individual, Mr. Fauci, and maybe even the way that we should eat more naturally. That these are some of the arguments that those that are against the vaccine bring up, and I'm wondering if it's not causing the entire population to look at their argument and at least see if there isn't some legitimacy to what they're saying.
I think that it's not a problem that could be solved by one action or another one. I think that people, as individuals, groups of people, they have to decide largely for themselves, really, what to do. The nature of the game is to survive. So whatever you do during the day will help you survive more than some other actions that you may take. And it's up to you to get educated yourself, to understand the policies of government, the pharmaceutical companies, but there is such a wealth of information and interpretation of that information that most people, I don't think they will be able to go through all that and come to the right solution for themselves. So the best policy is then follow what authorities are telling you, because it appears to me that they have the best sources to investigate, to go through all information, to come with the best possible solution. Hopefully, they have your best interests in their recommendations. And if that's the case, that's all what you should do. I don't think reading the Facebook post and all this hate propaganda and all these lies over there, this is the last thing what you should do.
There's just so much things that we have to deal with. So, a real quick topic change as we're on the issue of vaccinations and just COVID. The Republican governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, the new governor, is being sued already by 7 school districts in Virginia because he has the first thing he did as governor was making masks optional. That's the number one thing. The other thing he's doing is slowly getting away from imposing critical race theories being taught in the schools. So this is a governor that was supported by Trump. Interesting to see his success. Will be interesting to see what this means in the off-year elections, but also in 2024 in North Carolina with the Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who is a very controversial figure, has said that he'll be running. And will he be a threat to the Attorney General, who's pretty much the assumed nominee already for governor of North Carolina to succeed Roy Cooper, Josh Stein?
Mm-hmm.
But Youngkin is he's gotten off to the races, hasn't he?
Well, he's
Say the
definitely got
least.
off to the races.
Yes, yes, and he made all his money in the financial industry, actually, Sasha. So he was I think, an investor, or I can't remember what company he ran, but interesting to see. So, Mark, what else is going on?
Wonderful.
Well,
Yeah,
I was trying to find the article, and I'd love to hear Sasha's thoughts about this. But sometimes I find things out in the news through the usual channels of the news media, whether that's newspapers or television, and things along that line. But sometimes I also find them in very interesting places. And actually, you were just alluding to one of them, that being social media and everything. So I was just recently in a room in Clubhouse, which we know is a social media app, and ran into a gentleman named Stefan. And one of the things that Stefan is doing, I want to say he's of Eastern European background, is that he's actually going to a Supreme Court case in California, and he's arguing that geniuses, people that have a certain IQ, and I know that we used to have one that would come on this show on a regular basis and come on the network on a regular basis, and there were a couple of others that were doing studies on that. So I need to see if Julian's available sometime soon and everything. But his argument is that geniuses, by definition, are biased against. He calls it genius phobia and a couple of other things. So he's actually taking a case on March, so it'll actually be not this month, or about in a month and a half. that he's taken to the LA Supreme Court, arguing that while we're talking about the biases that exist with other groups, meaning those in the LGBT community, those in the minority community, and others, we're ignoring a group that is definitely not respected and is not getting the kind of support that they should get. He even uses Elon Musk as an example of somebody that he feels is a genius that doesn't get the respect from the overall popular culture as they should and everything. So I was actually trying to pull up Stefan's information a little bit more about it, and I may still continue to do that while I hear from Sasha and Steve as to whether they think that there is a bias against the smartest of the world.
It's hard for me to say. I don't understand where he's coming with the bias against geniuses. What is the definition of geniuses? Let's see if your IQ is 180. Are you a genius? Probably. What about 178? Are you a genius? Oh, probably not. So then the people with 180 and higher should be put together as a separate group and treated differently from those with 178, for example, or less. And how it would be implemented, whether they will have to get a better school system or a designed special system for them, and where it's going to be located in Los Angeles or Iowa or Florida, like where, and where you'll find enough teachers to teach those geniuses and to teach them doing what. If they are geniuses, they should prevail in any chosen field anyway. Why would they need some kind of special treatment? That's quite unclear to me.
Well, part of his argument, he talked about these different levels of neuros and things along those lines. Some of the stuff that I'm still learning about and still trying to understand. But part of what he was saying was that, like, if you put a genius in a more traditional job, like in a corporate America, most of them are not going to follow the rules because that is part of what geniuses do. They have a habit of rebellion and they don't always want to follow the rules. So therefore, they don't always. They march to a beat of a different drummer, and therefore they oftentimes find it difficult to fall into mainstream society. And I think that's where he was using people like Elon Musk, and there were some other people that he mentioned as well, even including Mark Cuban. And I want to say even Kanye West, where some people may consider a genius, and other people may say that he has no genius whatsoever. But the part of the argument I love to hear Steve's thoughts about is do people in that class march to the beat of a different drummer, and then therefore have it a harder time fitting into normal society?
Um, I think that I've had one friend who I grew up with in West Virginia that was an absolute genius, probably one of the smartest kids to ever graduate from West Virginia's school system. When he was in fifth grade or fourth grade, he did the Rubik's Cube, and he was actually in 10th or 11th grade math at the age of like sixth grade, right? And my parents never realized he was a genius until I was about 6 years old and we were playing in our house. And he asked my dad if he could borrow his medical book. And when he came back the next day, he recited every muscle in the human body by heart. And so my dad was like, there's something about this kid that's special. And he also, when we would play spaceship, he would say, we can't play it in space because there's no oxygen in the air. And we were like 6-year-old kids, right? He had a hard time fitting in initially, but as he grew up, he was able to acclimate and bring that kind of genius. So I think sometimes they may have a hard time fitting in, but I think it's finding that fit. And although you have sometimes people might think that they are socially challenged, right?
Right.
People might make fun of them because they're not cool. Um, they're not hanging out with the right girls. They're not jocks, not throwing the football and throwing the basketball. And we tend to reward athletic excellence more than academic excellence in terms of notoriety and stardom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the challenge. If you're a genius, now sometimes you might have a little bit of both. Um, but you know, sometimes you might have neither, like me, and you just outwork everybody, right? Um, but I get burned out at times because I just have to work so hard. Um, it's it's made me who I am, but nothing comes easy to me. So, but I don't know, so, you know, there's always geeks, so to speak,
Right.
where you don't fit in, and so I don't know. I mean, I think it's you know, he won the spelling bee too, but I got to the finals of the spelling bee when I was in sixth grade, and I lost in the finals to him. And I'll never
Mm.
forget, I lost in the word abominable because I went too fast. I
So
actually
you
knew how to
tried.
spell it. I went too fast. Yeah. I
So
said
you knew
A
how to
B O
spell it. It
B.
was just too hard.
I said ABOB. Oh God, sorry. Do over. Nah, you're gone. So, but yeah, and then the Supreme Court is hearing arguments on affirmative action. So this could
Mhm.
affect North Carolina. Um, Sarah Palin, and God, I haven't heard that word in a long time. Sasha, I don't know how she's looked upon in Canada. Yes, she was the woman who said she could see Russia from her house in Alaska, and she's suing the New York Times in a defamation case that there was some things that she did that led to the insurrection. But she has COVID again, I think for the third or fourth time for a few times, and of course, with a smiling face, saying that over my dead body will I be vaccinated. So uh,
So, where is her immune system? Where is her immunity if she got COVID 4 times or so?
I don't
So,
know
is
where.
no
Maybe I don't
there is
know.
no
Maybe she
herd
got a.
immunity then. This is my main question was when you were talking about herd immunity. Your assumption is that once you got sick with COVID, you develop some kind of antibodies that would prevent you getting sick second, third, or fourth time or
You
whatever.
could have long haul COVID. You could have different things like that. So I think it just we just don't know. I mean, we don't know what is making folks get this disease more and more. Do they just have an immune system that's weaker? Are they more prone to get it? But you're right, Sasha. There's no such thing as herd immunity. That's the point. It's not like it's just going to go away at the snap of a finger, right? Unless Thanos can, get a hold of the Infinity Stone and snap his finger and just
Well, at the
wipe
very
away.
beginning, Sweden was a country that adopted the herd immunity system. They didn't wear masks. There was no vaccination available at the time, so they were believing that once they will get all sick, they will develop this herd immunity and there will be no more COVID. It failed miserably. They lost a lot of lives, and then they canceled this policy, unfortunately. So this is why I'm very skeptical on this issue of herd immunity. I don't think it's there, really.
Speaking of things that people are skeptical about, we've had some very unusual weather. It snowed here not that long ago, and some people are still very skeptical about the impact of climate change. So I was just wondering for those people that are out there and thinking that climate change doesn't exist, even though 60-degree temperatures in the middle of January and February can't be all that normal. So I would think that they would see the actual facts and see that there are some things that have been impacted. As a matter of fact, I saw a study yesterday that said that California can look for some serious impacts to climate change coming their way in the next several years that could also impact their power grids and everything. But to both you, Steve and Sasha, what would your answer be to those that are out there that are not even believing that we're seeing any sort of change in our natural climate?
I mean, for me, um, you just look at the weather patterns that we're seeing across the country. Um, I, fires in California, snowing in India. Uh, you know, the mass amount of hurricanes and storms that we're seeing. I just think that there has to be something going on, and I think it's um, sometimes these issues get so political that people are fighting. You know, the fights for renewable energy because it's hurting fossil fuel, the dependence on natural gas. But I don't know what Sasha thinks, but I do believe that there is climate change, global warming. The evidence shows the sea levels rising, more melting in the polar Arctic areas. We've all traveled. Some of us have traveled those areas. We've seen it ourselves, um, and it's a real issue. So I just don't quite understand how people could say, "Well, no, there's no climate change." Um, That's just my opinion.
Uh, I'm with you on that. What is your thoughts on that, Sasha? What do you say to folks that might tell you that there's no climate change, even though there have been even those fires that impacted the western side of Canada as well, not just the western side of the United States, and there have been other things going on even in some of your former lands that you lived in as well. So when you hear those folks that make those arguments, what is your reaction to them?
So it's very difficult to believe that there is no climate change. There is one. However, there are economic impact of that. How does it work? For example, let's see, oil is now, what is it, $85 a barrel. If it
Yeah.
will go to, if you restrict the oil developments in the United States, so that's what Biden's effectively doing there. So now even major companies like ExxonMobil and others, they are cutting the use of funds to develop new projects and so on. So they cut all that, which is good for investors because they will get additional dividends, probably maybe shares buyback and so on. However, that will definitely lead to a much higher oil prices because if you don't develop the new oil deposits and so everybody is cutting back on production, even like OPEC countries or so on. So oil will skyrocket to $150 a barrel in no time. It's just a matter of a few months. Now, with $150 a barrel, guess what's happened? All transportation costs will skyrocket. So anything from food to major items, because everything has to be delivered. And if delivery cost instead of $70 a barrel, $150 a barrel, your prices will skyrocket, which leads into even bigger inflation and calamity for many primarily working people because they will have much less home pay to take home. And so, how to mitigate both to worry about climate change and at the same time decrease oil production, so not to cover this possible prices, which they will rise because no government can regulate oil prices. We know all that for sure. It's a natural event. It will develop very quickly, and at $150 a barrel, the consequences, the economic consequences will far outweigh any climate change considerations. That's my outlook on that.
No, it's interesting you say that because they will study just about everything, and one of the latest studies that's out there now and everything. And I wish Shaquille was here because he's going to love this one. But apparently, there's a study out there saying growing up poor literally affects the way a child brains develop, and having a little extra cash on hand can help children adapt to the change better. So this was a study conducted by some folks, I believe, out of Wisconsin, but they had done an experiment called Baby's First Years, and they provided poor mothers with cash stipends of either $333 per month or $20 per month for the first year of their children's lives. And the researchers, which apparently was a group of collaborators from different universities, found that having more money altered the infant's brain activity in ways that suggested stronger cognitive development. So apparently, getting this extra money to the family helped the brain develop and all of that. So I just wondering what you think about this because we know we just had those old child credits that were going out there. I think those just ended, but they just did this whole study and have found that it reduces stress and also is a really good thing to help develop the children's brains. And this was a study that was just recently released. So what do you think when these kind of studies come to defend these kind of proposals? So apparently they did it even before the pandemic because it looks like they did the test way back in 2018 and 2019. So apparently if you give folks some money, it'll make the brains develop faster.
There you go. Well, there's nothing like the old cash coming in and make your brain happy, before you go to bed at night. See some money coming in, right? I mean, I tell you, there's a lot of people out there hurting financially. It can affect your mental stability, right?
Yep. And I mean, we all remember as kids, at least in the West, you would always anxiously wait when you were young to see if you got that extra quarter or that extra dollar, whatever they were going to leave you, and when the tooth fairy would come by and drop the change over and everything. I'm sure that even with the Indian roots, maybe your family did something similar.
Yes, you never know. You never know, guys, right? Um, well, tomorrow we're going to be talking, hopefully, with Sanjay Puri. I'm going to be calling the embassy. He's with the U.S. India Pact, talking about India Republic Day, talk a little bit about U.S. foreign policy towards India, how important it is with the rise of China, North Korea, the kinds of things that the U.S. and India can work on. And we'll also talk about some tough questions about the rise of nationalism in India, the Hindu state, what's going on with India moving away, some people say, from being a truly secular nation to one that is um, targeting more the minorities within those countries. And on Thursday, Jeremy Robbins, I'll be opening up with my blog on WRL TechWire on skilled immigration and the worker shortage in the US and how immigrants might be able to help us with inflation. But we'll talk about, what Mr. Robbins is doing with immigration bills that he's trying to push through the Congress and the Senate. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap up today's show?
No, it's about that time. It's about maybe 2 or 3 minutes to go. So we're waiting for your closing remarks and we'll get ready to get on out of here and everything. By the way, one of those professors in that children's study is out of Duke. So I might have to reach out to them and see if Dr. Lisa A. Ginnington wants to come on and share her thoughts about income and its impact on poverty, education, and just child development and adult development in general. Like I said, I knew it was a multi-layered study that had various colleges, but apparently Duke was one of those featured. So I may reach out to her on LinkedIn and see if we can get her to come in and talk about this study and give us a more detailed explanation, to put it that way. But yeah, just going to your final thoughts. And I don't know if Sasha's got anything that he's got on his mind. We do know that he just did his fantastic show on yesterday. And of course, he's got his amazing chess show coming up as well. So any things that you want to share that you've got going on?
Yeah, financial markets are very, very interesting, and you can see tomorrow they'll have rerun of the latest show, and Saturday, sorry. I'm waiting for confirmation of some of the grandmasters, and this crazy time we will have one grandmaster in, for example, Hamburg in Germany, and his wife is in Bucharest, Romania, and they will both probably will come on the show, as well as Professor Regan, who is coming back from Italy, hopefully in time to be on the show, and some other names like we had before. Okay,
Right.
so we'll have a good time on Saturday.
Well,
Sounds like it.
thank you so much, and it's been an honor for us to be here today on Pod TV's World Edition, soon to be a part of the Roku Network, where we try to update our audience about issues going around the country and around the world, and what we can do to have a respectful civil conversation. Tomorrow, as we begin our discussion of India Republic Day, I want to once again talk about, real quickly, the questions we're hearing about when we turn on CNN, when I was asked on Sirius XM, Inside the Issues with Dr. Wilmer Leon. Is democracy in decline? Is democracy in danger in the United States? It led me to come to a realization that we often assume democracy is easy, and it's not easy. It's a lot of work. I recently read a book called The Narrow Corridor. It's a wonderful book about Darren Acemoglu and James Robertson, and it's about states and societies and the fate of liberty. One of the theories of the book, and I actually got it from reading Fareed Zakaria's blogs, who recommended it, is that there's a narrow corridor. It's not a door, one that you open, but a long corridor needs to be traveled, where a strong democracy has the ability to balance a strong state that can create and prevent chaos and can create order with balancing the needs of civil rights, human rights, and a society. American democracy has just been that. How do I honor a flag with a Pledge of Allegiance and then respect the rights of a citizen who wants to burn that flag, a flag that many Americans and our soldiers have defended in the fight for freedom for us and all those around the world? That's the irony. Strong democracies require faith in our institutions, faith in our system, respecting the outcomes of our elections. And I think it's fair to say that that's just not happening as much in the United States. We've heard conspiracy theories that election was rigged when there's no evidence that it is. We're seeing those losing elections by 30, 40 to 50% margins, even more, and still saying that they're unwilling to concede the election. This is also happening at a time when states are changing their laws to change the outcomes of elections, either transferring powers from elected officials. I think it's important for us to understand what is taking place and not to just assume, no matter what democracy we live in, that democracy is there to stay. It's something that we cannot take for granted. It's something we must fight for. And ironically, President Zelensky from the Ukraine said that we must fight for democracy every day. Perhaps the president of Ukraine is correct. We must fight for it. We must take it for granted. And tomorrow we will talk about this with India. What is going on in the Republic of India? Republic Day is the day they signed the Constitution, making India a republic. We look forward to this discussion and others as we continue our show, World Edition, which will be on Roku Network starting on March 1st. From our family to yours, thank you so much. Be safe wherever you are. Looking forward to another day.